Hello, guys. First of all, thank you for staying until 6 p.m. here. I'm sure it was a long day. But yeah, the talk today is about NFTs and how we are planning on bringing NFTs to millions of people and scaling that on Ethereum. So Pierre here will talk about the tech side of things, and I'll talk about the Sorare side of things and our vision and thesis to bring NFTs to millions of users. So I just wanted to start with the origin story of Sorare. So basically in 2018, like most of us here, we discovered CryptoKitties. And through that, we discovered that we could collect digitally. And the founders, as football fans, they thought that there was a massive opportunity to create a digital object that you can collect and bring one of the most coveted IPs in the world to it, which is the IP of football clubs, football leagues, and players. And so that's what they started doing in 2018, partnering with the Belgian Pro League, and then convincing more and more leagues and clubs and players as we went through. And so in 2020, that was kind of our breakthrough year, where we started partnering with Paris Saint-Germain, Liverpool, Real Madrid, etc. But the idea of Sorare is not to just build collectibles that have the IP of football clubs, but it's also about bringing utility to these collectibles in a very compelling game. And here on the slide, I'm showing the FIFA game built by EA Sports. And EA Sports, every year, they launch what they call icons. And these icons, they sell $1.6 billion worth of icons per year. And they create them at the beginning of the year, and they make them disappear at the end of the year. And these icons are items in a video game that you cannot really trade outside of EA, that you cannot really use outside of EA's ecosystem. And so we think that there's a massive opportunity to do something a lot better with NFTs. But really the idea is, how can you create NFTs that are valuable on the long term and sustainable, not just something that can be a fad of a few months. And so regarding that, there's really 4 criteria that you'll be looking at when it comes to creating valuable NFTs. The first one is scarcity. Obviously, we can do that through NFTs. And to give you an example, in the 1980s, trading cards lost a lot of value because there was an overissuance of trading cards. And so with NFTs, you have this transparency that really makes you build a great community around a really transparent standard of your scarcity. And I'll go more in detail about that after. The second aspect is making these collectibles reputable. And we can see that people, through his reputation, or CryptoPunks through their storytelling, are creating also great NFTs that have value. The third point would be liquidity. CryptoPunks can be traded on OpenSea, Rarible, and any other NFT platform all around the world. And the final point, which is really our main thesis at Sorare, is baking utility and multiple layers of utility within these NFTs. And there's multiple ways of doing that, either by creating in-game utility, or experiential utility, or ticketing utility, and that's what we are looking at. So I'll give you an example of how at Sorare we try to achieve this. The first thing is scarcity. Having a transparent and easy to understand standard of scarcity. At Sorare, what we have is 3 levels of cards. One is the unique card. This is the Paulo Dybala card. There's only 1 per player per season. Then there's the super rare card. There'll be 10 per player per season. And then there'll be the rare card, 11 per player per season. And this scarcity is known by all, both in Sorare.com, but also on the blockchain, on Ethereum, on Etherscan. The second point is, having great reputation and IP. And what we're building here is the football game for NFTs, and we've been adding more and more clubs and more leagues as we go. Our goal is pretty simple and straightforward. It's to onboard the top 20 leagues in the world, and educate them on the benefits of blockchain technology and NFTs for them. Why they sign with Sorare or with any blockchain company is pretty easy. The first thing is it creates a new revenue stream for them. It also creates an added new revenue stream, which is monetizing the secondary market, right? So if I'm Real Madrid and I sell a Panini card, whenever that Panini card sells again on eBay, I don't make any money on that. But I would make money on Sorare if Sorare took a fee in the secondary market, which actually we don't today, because we want to create liquidity, which is my third point. And the way we sell cards on Sorare is pretty easy. The new cards are sold on auction. So basically, the highest bidder wins the auction. And that's how the price setting mechanism works. And then once you own the card, you can do whatever you want with it. You can sell it on Sorare. There's no take rate. There's no fee. You can also sell it on OpenSea and Rarible on any other platform that supports the Ethereum NFT standard, ERC 721. And that liquidity is very important to make sure that you do have a sustainable NFT project. And finally, the third and the fourth point, sorry, the most important one would be this one. Having utility that is long-lasting, sustainable, and drives retention. And that's what we've seen at Sorare, is that people that play Sorare and collect Sorare cards are actually gamers. They're not traders, they're not speculators, they are gamers, and they see the value in the cards because there's this game. And so the game loop is pretty simple. You come in, you collect cards, you compose your team, enjoy the live experience of fantasy, watching your players, like have an amazing performance online, offline, and then you watch the score of that player online, and you can see the score of your team, you can get ranked, and depending on your performance, you'll earn rewards. And that's the game loop, right? The beauty of NFTs is that they have these superpowers where you can basically do whatever you want with them. You can use them in Sorare, but you can also use them elsewhere. And so we've been very lucky, and it's something that we did not expect 2.5 years after having launched the alpha of the game, to see so many side projects build games on Sorare, build third-party applications on top of Sorare cards. So really our vision and where we want to go today is to build the best fantasy football game there is. And then it's about baking into this fantasy experience some really cool content experiences that you can unlock through specific NFTs, adding even more utility than purely just the gaming utility. And then the third point is building an ecosystem of games around Sorare cards. This will be an asset-centric type of experience and not a game-centric type of project. And so far we've actually been to step 3 without really providing any incentive other than building on an open blockchain, building with an open API that anyone can access to and anyone can code with. And we've been very lucky and fortunate to see gaming studios such as Ubisoft building on top of Sorare cards. Just yesterday, there was a new project that announced an app on top of Sorare cards before we actually released our own app. So we've been beaten to it. But it's been incredible to see how building in the open and building with this kind of community-led growth has made the product evolve. But I'll leave the floor to Pierre, who's been building our blockchain infrastructure, and we've had a lot of challenges on that. So I'll leave him.
Hi everyone, I'm Pierre, so I'm a senior software developer at Sorare. So I'm going to speak about scalability from a technical standpoint, where we started, where we are at, and where we are going, and show you the challenges we got along the way. It started basically, we launched our product, the first version of our product in March 2019. And actually, we were already on a scaling solution, which is called Loom. So at the time, they had a side chain, an Ethereum side chain, and that's where we started, basically. So we had sub-second trades, and it was working very well until December of 2019, where Loom basically decided to pivot, and they were no longer going to maintain their side chain. So we had to make a decision. So where are we going now? So we decided to go on the main chain. For the main reason was exposure. So we know that Ethereum has a huge ecosystem. Being there was a way for us to be more visible. So around, and I just forgot, we started Q4 2019, we had around 3,000 trades in a quarter. So April 2020, we migrated to Ethereum. So at this point, we had to mint all our tokens on Ethereum. But at that point in time, we only had 3,000 or 4,000 tokens. So that was something we could do. And at the time, the gas price was around 5 gwei, so that was okay. In Q2 2020, we reached 30K trades in a quarter. So it started growing. And basically today, the last quarter, so Q2 2021, we settled 210,000 trades on Ethereum. And that's why we are looking for a scaling solution. And we've decided to partner with Starkware to bring a better experience to our customers. And we are currently working on migrating, and we should be migrating tomorrow, if everything goes as planned. So yeah, we had a lot of work in the recent weeks. Sorry. So the scalability challenge. Just to give you a few numbers, so you see where we stand. So in the Q2 2021, we used 73 billion gas. That's a lot, and if you assume 15 million gas limit per block, 4 blocks per minute, that's about 1% of the total Ethereum block space over the quarter. So that's already a lot. We are planning to grow, so Brian presented the different scarcities we have, but it's still a small amount of cards, 100 cards for Ronaldo is very little, since a lot of people want this card. So we do plan to have more cards, and if we have the same growth over the next year, it could represent up to 10% of the total Ethereum block space, which is not something we can do, and Ethereum won't be able to handle that at decent prices. We want to be able to sell NFTs that are worth 5 to 10 euros, but with current gas prices, it's probably around 20 to 100 euros to mint an NFT. Sorry, 10 to 40 euros. And yeah, so it's not just about the price, it's also about UX impacts. So we have many of our users, they've never heard of Ethereum or gas fees or transactions or private keys. And when they buy a card and they pay by credit card and they only receive the card 24 hours later or 48 hours later, they're kind of surprised, and we get a lot of support tickets. So yeah, UX is not great. That's one more reason we want to move to a scaling solution. So at the beginning of 2021, basically we started doing a review of what were our options in terms of scalability. So everyone is familiar with the scalability trilemma. which basically says you can have scalability, security, and decentralization at the same time. You have to choose which one you're willing to sacrifice. So in our review of scaling solutions, basically we had a look at layer ones, so other blockchains. But I mean, we are really attached to Ethereum. It has like the highest adoption, the biggest projects, and we believe it's the most neutral infrastructure with no for-profit organization controlling it. So we decided to remain on Ethereum. It was kind of an evidence for us. The second option we looked at was sidechains. Sidechains have benefits, but we've had an experience with a sidechain. That's where we started, and they basically told us that we should migrate in 2 months because the chain is going to die at some point. So we didn't want to do the same thing, although I know sidechains are different. It's not the same team, but yeah, we passed on that option too. So the next option was layer 2 protocols. So it's been trending a lot over the past 6 months or even year. And there's like 2 main flavors, which are optimistic rollups and ZK rollups. What we like about layer 2 protocols is that they inherit the security and decentralization from Ethereum. They don't make new assumptions. There's no other chain, there's no other validators. So optimistic rollups have a huge advantage today in the sense that they are EVM compatible. But they have also drawbacks, especially for NFTs, in terms of withdrawal times. Could be around like a week to withdraw an NFT. But also, I believe it scales less than ZK rollups because all the data has to be on chain, which means that, yeah, at some point it's going to be clogged, I guess. And we are kind of lucky because the way we use the blockchain is pretty straightforward. We only do minting of NFTs and trades of NFTs. So it's really just trading an asset. There's like, our game is not decentralized. We don't have like complex logic that some DeFi projects have. So having a full EVM compatible solution was not necessarily something we needed. So we looked at ZK rollups. The main benefit is withdrawal times and scalability. There's several ways of using a rollup. I don't know if people are familiar with the data availability modes, but basically you can choose to have data on-chain or data off-chain. When you have data off-chain, it like opens the door to a very high scalability. So there's like multiple people in the space. We've decided working on with Starkware. The reason we've decided to go with them is they have a world-class cryptography and engineering team. They have focused on scalability, which is our main concern today, and that's what we want to tackle first. And also what was really reassuring for us is that they have systems in production since summer 2020, meaning that there is already a year of run, which is quite reassuring. So I'm just going to try to explain very briefly how like the concept of ZK rollups, basically. So Ethereum has constraints in terms of computation and storage. So the goal of the ZK rollup is to reduce storage and computation on main chain and try to take most of it off chain. So to reduce the storage, we use a Merkle tree. Basically, the leaves of the Merkle tree. I just forget always to, so that's the Merkle tree. For the, so basically the leaves of the Merkle tree represent ownership of an asset. And we kind of hash all of this together to get the Merkle root, which is a compressed representation of the state. That's what we're going to commit on-chain. The second part of it is more around the ZK proofs themselves. So there's two important things. So at Starkware, they work with ZK Starks. Stark stands for Scalable, Transparent Argument of Knowledge. And basically, we are very interested in the first part, which is the S, which stands for Scalable. I'll get back to that just a bit later. So what we're trying to do, I've just wrote a formula. So we have a function f that takes two arguments, the previous root of the Merkle tree, a list of transactions, and that turns that into a new Merkle root that represents the new state. Transactions are like, they are similar to Ethereum transactions, so you can find nonces, you can find signatures, and basically it's just saying, okay, I want to send X amount of that token to that person, to simplify. And so what the ZK proof does is that you can prove that you have a set of transactions that with the previous root and the function f gives you the new root. So that means that what you need to commit on-chain to prove that your new state is valid is only the ZK proof, and the contract already knows about the function. So you submit the ZK proof and the next root, and that's enough to guarantee the validity of the new root. Coming back to the scalability part, so how Ethereum works is that basically they replay all transactions, so all the nodes of the network replay the transaction and verify they are valid. So with the ZK proofs, so there's a proving system where there is a prover and a verifier. So the goal is to construct a proof in a time that is linear to the computation time. So you can see on the chart, basically the light blue line is the proving time, the dark blue line is the computation time. So you can see that is roughly the same order of magnitude. But the verifying time is much smaller, and in fact is exponentially smaller than the computation time. So it means that instead of verifying all the transaction, which has a cost of t, you'll only verify the proof, which is exponentially smaller than t. So I mentioned that there are several data availability modes. So DYDX, for instance, that works with Starkware as well. They are using a ZK rollup in the sense that they post all the data on-chain as cold data, meaning that anyone can reconstruct the Merkle tree. But it also means you need to post data on-chain. We're going to run in the Validium mode, which means that the data is not posted on-chain. On-chain, you'll only have the Merkle root. For the system to be self-custodial, users need to be able to exit the rollup without having to interact with Sorare or Starkware. So for that, you need a Merkle proof. And basically, there is what we call a data availability committee. So it's 5 or 6 committee members. And to be able to commit a new state on-chain, you basically need two things. You need a proof, which is valid, that basically says there is a set of transactions that allow me to go from the previous root to the new root. But you also need n of m signatures from the members of the data availability committee. they basically attest that they have all the data that they need to be able to recompute the Merkle root. So it means that if someone wants to exit without going through Sorare or Starkware, they could just turn to a data availability committee member, which could provide them with the Merkle proof. So some people might prefer having additional guarantees around data availability, and we know Starkware is working on a new data availability mode, which is called Volition, which will let the users decide if they want to have the data on-chain or off-chain, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, we have NFTs that range in value from €5 to 100,000 euros, and you're not willing to pay the same amount of security for a €100,000 token or a €5 token. So having that flexibility is very interesting. So that's all for our talk. If you have questions, we are more than happy to answer. So the current TPS, we basically do 3,000 transactions per day today. That's about 0.03, I think, transactions per second. But like today, we basically sell 111 cards of each player. And we are planning on introducing a new Scarcity, which has 1,000 editions. So we're going to probably do tenfold just on the new issuance. So we'll probably reach around 0.3 transactions per second. And also what is interesting is that, so at Sorare we have the primary market where we sell cards. We also have the secondary market, and the secondary market is growing. So if you think that like maybe 10% of the secondary market trades every month, that number is going to grow, right? So the amount of card that has been sold before is going to grow exponentially. So we expect to reach transactions around 1 transaction per second, and that's what we would like to be able to have, yeah, from a technical standpoint.
Thank you. Today you're using Solidity in order to emit your NFTs, which allows composability and people to develop games on top of your game. How do you think using another language and another system will affect this dynamic?
That's a great question. Composability is something that we took into account when deciding to have a roll-up, which is a closed roll-up as well. So, like, if we look at the things today, we have like several apps building on top of us. None of them are interacting with Solidity. Just they read through Solidity. But given the current gas costs, actually no one can really afford to build a game on Solidity on top of our NFTs. So there is composability in theory, but in practice, what we see today is that it's too expensive. So that's unfortunate. Now, so we are moving on Starkware, and we're using their product, which is called Stark Exchange, which is basically an exchange. and it's built on top of Cairo, which is their like Turing-complete language, and they have a roadmap to go to Starknet, which will be an open rollup, so where applications should be able to talk to each other. So there is a roadmap. It's not there yet, but I think today we are happy to sacrifice a bit composability for scalability and have that come a bit later. Yeah.
Anyone else wants to make a question?
Thanks, everyone. There's one question.
I have a non-technical question. So, what is the end game for Sorare? Like, what can we? Yeah, I can precise my question. What can I do with a Sorare card in the future?
So right now, what you can do with a Sorare card is play our fancy game. Our kind of short-term ambition is to build the best fancy game there is out there. If you think about fancy football, it's a very fragmented market. You have a fancy game in every country that is different, and so we are building a global one that will cater to all these different audiences at once. And we are supercharging them with these in-game items that are NFTs. And so with a card, you can play the game, you can earn rewards, and these are in-game rewards. Going forward, we are working with the football clubs to make these rewards more special, kind of experiences that money can't buy, right? So you can imagine stuff like, I participate in fancy game, I score well, I rank in the top 5, I eligible to go to the training ground at Real Madrid and play ball with Benzema. Or I'm in the stadium, I play the fancy game, and I, play Cristiano Ronaldo in my team, and I'm in the Juventus stadium, and he scores. And since you're in the stadium, then that unlocks an experience in the stadium. Or NFTs as tickets to a game, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things that we are exploring that we're just scratching the surface, and that also depends on the partners that we have, and we're very lucky to have enough partners to really brainstorm at multiple levels and have great ideas coming in and from the team and from our partners.
Congrats for being a unicorn today.
Thank you. And by the way, I don't know if there's any other questions, but we are recruiting a lot of people, so feel free to go on our website and look at the open positions.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Do you plan to go beyond football as well, or is that going to be the focus for the next years?
We think football is, the biggest sport in the world. It's not we think, it is. So there's a massive opportunity there. But we are building a model, which is fancy NFTs that no one else has built so far. And, we think there's great opportunities to replicate that model to different sports. So it is in our long-term strategy to start thinking about, how we could replicate that to other sports. And we have a few in mind, and we have a few that we could do in the next few years. Thank you. Have a great evening.